This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 59 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I'm Craig, and he is...
Chris.
Chris, we are here to talk very nicely about you for a half hour.
Yeah,
just saying nice things.
It's going to be a little bit of self-bragging, so I'm not sure how excited I am about this, but the subject of the episode kind of demands it.
Well, okay, so today we are going to be talking. It's titled "Be Deliberate," and we're going to be talking about something that Chris has brought up several times over the last year or so on the podcast, and that's having an owner mindset, shifting into that owner mindset and what that entails. And one of the things is about being deliberate. Now, the thing is, this is going to be very biographical. We're going to be talking about a lot of your experiences, your life stuff. You have mentioned several times in previous episodes that you own a lot of businesses. And so Haulin Assets is not your first rodeo. And you're going to be talking about a lot of that business experience and what it means as far as an owner's mindset to be deliberate, right?
Yeah, a lot of the business experience and really just life experience, because some of this stuff is, even really started, and the mentality really started even before I started my businesses. It's something I've kind of something that's bred into me, I guess, to a certain extent, and should be interesting. I'm hoping. I feel incredibly blessed. I feel like I've been fairly successful in life, and a lot of it is because of this, the ownership mentality, the owner mentality, and just the fact that I've been deliberate since I was really young in age, and it's really is what has guided me and helped me achieve the success that I have at this point in my life.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get there in just a moment, but first I'll remind everybody, for full show notes for this and past episodes, go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com. That's Haulin with no G, HaulinAssetsLLC.com, and go check out past episodes there. You can listen in, you can comment, you can see the full show notes, all the documents and things that we share on many of our episodes. So please go there and find us on Facebook if you want another way to contact us, to reach out, to ask any questions you'd like us to address on the show. You're welcome to do that in either of those places. So, let's see. I think that's all the housekeeping, Chris.
That should be all the housekeeping.
So that means before we get to the subject at hand for today, I've got to ask you, what's been happening out on the road lately?
Well, it's been a crazy week. We're the weekend after Labor Day weekend, and can I tell you how much I hate having a truck out on the road over the weekend? One, it's Mike's great because he actually likes to be out on a holiday weekend because he'd just as soon stay away from the crowds and then take a week or weekend or something off.
Some other weekend
when he can take things off a little bit. But anytime you're trying to pick up a load or deliver a load on a holiday weekend is just a nightmare. I mean, it took him 7 hours to get unloaded at a receiver on Monday, on Labor Day. It's never fun.
Well, there's that, and there's the fact that we missed our deadline this week, Chris. This episode is a day late.
We did. We have a pretty good excuse for that, though.
I'd say so. Yeah. No, this week, and I was thinking of you, actually, a few times. Yesterday, we had this crazy windstorm come through northern Utah. A lot of property destroyed. I haven't heard reports of anybody hurt yet, but I kind of...
there was one person killed. I
didn't hear it.
Yeah, one person died. Several injuries.
Yeah, no joke. And anyway, but I was thinking about it because I was just thinking, man, it must be a nightmare to even think about having a truck out on the road right now.
Yeah, Mike was in Dallas, so far away from Utah, thank goodness. But yeah, it was crazy. I read a news article that on Monday night, Tuesday morning, there were 45 semis got blown over throughout Utah.
Jeez.
My brother had a big tree in his front yard, of 25 plus foot pine tree, get blown over into the street. So my dad was driving to go help him, cut it apart and get it out of the street. And he said in a 5-mile stretch on I-15 between Farmington, Utah and Centerville, Utah, so just a little bit north of Salt Lake, he counted 14 semis that had been blown off the road. Blown over. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. It's, you could look out and see them all kind of just sitting there. They all pulled over and just sat and prayed
Yeah, they
that they
had,
wouldn't get knocked over.
I mean, there were reports of gusts up to 112 miles an hour.
Yeah. Anyway, so point being, it was crazy out on the road, and it also knocked out the power and the internet access, and so yeah, we couldn't make our show. Sorry, everybody, we're a day late.
We're recording on Wednesday, and so this is 2 days, really a day and a half, 2 days after the storm. There's still places without power.
Yeah. Anyway, luckily we've got it back here, so let's go ahead and talk about the subject at hand, Chris, and that's being deliberate. How do you want to start with this? Do you want to talk about the definition of deliberate, kind of how you approach that word?
I think that's a great place to start.
Webster's dictionary defines deliberate as... No, not like that.
No, yeah, do it. That's good. That's a good
I don't
radio
actually
voice
know.
right there.
I don't know the dictionary definition.
The definition is done consciously and intentionally.
Okay, all right.
So, being deliberate, to me, it just seems like you've got a good fixed goal, an idea of what you're going to do, and you just kind of go out and do it and make it happen, right?
So you said goal, and I'm trying to think, okay, I'm going to be thinking constantly through this episode about the idea of an owner mindset, and I feel like goals are going to be the major, key word.
Yeah,
to go along with this.
So however you want to put it, a goal, or in the military, we like to refer to this as an end state. Where do you want to be at some point in the future? What does that future look like? And then really being deliberate is just creating that path or creating that plan that gets you to that end state, that goal.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so good. Why is this something that you wanted to talk about? I gather that you feel like this is something you're good at.
It is, I feel like, something I'm really good at. There's not a whole lot of things in life that I feel like I'm good at. One, I'm super passionate about this. I feel like I'm good at it. And it's something I've really been doing ever since I was young, since I was a teenager. I've been deliberate about all that I do. I consciously make the decisions in my life are kind of focused around this. So when I was younger, even in my teenage years, I kind of made the decision in my mind that I wanted to be financially successful. And that's always something that's been incredibly important to me. You take, for example, as a teenager, when I was, going through high school in the summers, instead of, taking the summer off and playing with my friends like most people did, I'd go live with my grandparents, that were an hour plus away, and work on the farm 80 hours a week.
And at that time, so as a teenager, you were thinking to yourself, I'm going to do this because all my other friends are not going to make any money and I want money.
I knew I wanted to be financially successful. I knew I wanted to be financially independent at some point. So I started making those deliberate decisions in my life early on that I'm going to do the things that will help me get to that end goal of being, financially successful. And I, as time went on, I kind of defined that. I kind of created an idea or that end state in mind of what that financial success really means. Because, for one person, financial success can mean one thing, for another, for somebody else, something completely different. So I developed what I saw as what that financial success was.
And what is that? So how did you end up defining it?
So my ultimate end goal is to be financially independent by the time I'm 50 years old.
Okay, now hang on, because I've heard this term before. I want to be financially independent. What in the world does that mean?
So, and it probably means something a little bit different for everybody, but for me, that means if I want to quit my job, I can quit my job. I've got my nest egg or retirement funds or whatever it is that I need, my rental properties that produce income. So I'm living off this passive income, and I can do what I want. If I want to keep working and keep earning money, I could do that. If I want to quit my job and lay in bed and eat bonbons all day, I can do that too.
Which we should point out, by the way, just what a relaxed posture you have on the couch right now.
I'm full on lounging today.
Yeah, he's Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park over on that couch. Luckily, his shirt's still on. Okay, so financially independent means you have everything you need.
Yep.
To support yourself.
Yep. I don't need a job. I don't need anything else. I can survive doing nothing if I wanted to.
Okay. And when did you come up with that goal?
I was probably, when I got it to that point where I defined it like that, I was probably in my early 20s.
Okay. Wow.
Really in my early 20s. But even before that, I was doing things
I'm in
to
my
kind of
mid-
help me get that.
I'm in my mid 30s and I just learned what financially independent means. Okay. So for all the rest of you out there, I'm with you.
We'll get to this later, but it's never too late to start.
I was just going to ask you. No, I was going to ask you. Yeah, we'll come to this later.
I want to talk a little bit more about that at the end, but it is never too late to start.
Okay. Sorry, but you were saying.
So even early on, like right as I was getting ready to finish high school, I knew I wanted to go to college, and I wasn't smart enough to get scholarships or anything like that. So I decided to join the Army to help me pay for college. And I did that because I knew I wanted to get out of college without any debt. And, I started making those kind of financial decisions pretty early on in life to help prepare the way so I could reach that financial independence. But like I said, I really honed it in my early 20s and really kind of created that end state. So the end state was financial independence by the time I was 50. And, one of the things that the Army over the years has taught me really well is a concept called backwards planning. I think we talked about it. We've talked a little bit about it.
Is this the beginning with the end in mind?
Yeah. Beginning with the end in mind and kind of working your way backwards. Right.
Yeah.
So, the financial independence thing, at the age of 50, that's a goal that is, at that point, I mean, it was 30 years in the future. It was a long ways in the future. There's a lot of things that need to happen to get there. And so you kind of start that backwards planning process. And I really kind of created steps along the route. So I decided that by the time I was 40, in order to be financially independent by the time I was 50, I needed to have a net worth of at least $1 million.
Okay. All right.
And then I took a step back even further from that. I looked at, okay, so by the time I'm 30, I wanted to own $1 million worth of real estate. So I kind of set all three of those goals up in my early 20s. $1 million worth of real estate by the time I'm 30. I wanted to have a net worth of $1 million by the time I was 40. And then I figured if I was able to do those two things, I'd be financially independent by the time I was 50.
How old are you right now?
42.
And
I've made the first goal.
You did?
I did, yeah.
The
absolutely.
first goal being $1 million in real estate?
No, actually, I didn't make that one.
Oh, okay.
I've got the 41. So I actually, we'll talk a little bit about this, but
You're saying you're worth $1 million?
I am.
Okay, all right.
I do.
Yeah, all right. We'll talk about money later, Chris.
Is this where you ask for a raise?
That's right. No, okay. But the first one, back up to the real estate one. You wanted to own $1 million in real estate by the time you're 30, and you didn't achieve that.
I did not.
Oh,
no.
So how close did you get?
I got pretty close. I started buying my first piece of real estate. So I was kind of slow. I got out of college a little later on in life than I would have liked to. I graduated when I was about 26, 27 years old. And within that first year after I graduated, I finally have a steady income. I'm finally making money. And that's when I purchased my first piece of real estate. But what I did is different than what most people did because I was deliberate about what I was trying to do in achieving those goals. So, you think about it, most people, they graduate from college or a trade school, or they get, their first job, or they're making a steady income. They want to buy something real estate wise. What do?
Buy a house?
They go out and buy a house, right? A single family home, like their starter home, right?
Yeah.
That's typically what most people do. I did something a little bit different.
Me too. I rented for 8 years.
Yeah, that's probably not the best route if you're trying to build that net worth. So I'm a big firm believer in real estate. I think it's a great vehicle to get you some net worth. And so what we decided to do was,
we being you and your wife?
Me and my wife.
Okay.
We decided instead of buying a single family home, we would buy a fourplex. We'd live in one of the units and rent out the rest. So we started looking pretty quick for a piece of real estate, and we ended up doing that. So 27 years old, I buy my first piece of real estate, and it's a fourplex. So here's where one of the differences is, and this is part of the whole being deliberate thing. I was conscious about trying to build that net worth, buying that real estate. And the piece of property we bought was a $320,000 fourplex. Now, I couldn't afford a $320,000 home, single family home at that time. Do you know why I could afford to buy a fourplex?
Because
That was worth that much?
well, there's two options here, right? Either family or you knew you'd have the extra income.
No, family didn't help. The extra income, yes, because now instead of buying, when you buy a $320,000 single family home, who's paying the entire mortgage?
You are.
You are. But when you buy a fourplex,
you can tell the bank.
You can tell the bank, and the bank will allow you to include some of that rental income as part of your income even before you buy it, so that you can buy something. I probably would have only been able to afford $150,000 to a $200,000 home at that time. Instead, we buy a $320,000 piece of real estate, and what ends up happening is two big things happen there. I'm essentially buying a property that's going to appreciate at 2 times the rate of a $150,000 home. So, and then also the mortgage is going to get paid off. A much bigger chunk of mortgage is going to get paid off over the 30 years of the loan because it's a higher value property than the $150,000 property. So basically what that kind of boils down to is I'm gaining equity at twice the rate I would have otherwise if I just bought that $150,000 starter home.
And that was your first piece of property, and then you went on and bought others as well, right?
We did. And so my wife and I, over the next 3 or so years after that, kind of did the same thing. We went and bought another fourplex, and then we went and bought a duplex. So by the time I was 30, I just closed on the third piece of property, and it was at that point we had about $800,000 worth of real estate.
And and what year was this? I'm sorry, I'm getting a picture in my head, and I feel like I already know the answer.
Let's see, this was 2008.
Yeah, okay, that's what I want.
And if you know anything about 2008, it wasn't a good year to be buying real estate.
I don't know much about what did you say, backward
planning.
Backward planning, but I can do backward math. Okay, he's 42 years old. Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, so that wasn't exactly the best year to be buying real estate. And so, but that brings me to another really good point, about this whole thing. Things change, right?
Yeah.
Are you always going to meet your goals? You're always going to, is everything going to unfold exactly as you've laid it out?
Of course not.
No, it never does. In the military, another one of the things that we like to say is, plans change as soon as bullets start to fly.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing in a situation like this. You're always going to run into issues. You're always going to run into problems. There's going to be things out of your control that you have to deal with. And that's exactly what happened in this point. In 2008 happened. The real estate market crashed. We in the previous 3 or so years before that had just closed on 3 pieces of real estate. Now all of a sudden, we've hit one of the worst real estate markets in the world. And really 2 of those pieces of real estate were basically purchased at the peak of the bubble. Right?
Yeah.
Almost the worst possible timing.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So now tell me a little bit about how this applies to the subject today, which is being deliberate. Is it essentially that, if I understand right, you knew where you wanted to be by the time you were 50, and so you set a goal of here's where I want to be by the time I'm 30 to get me there, that incremental growth, right? Is that what you're talking about, being deliberate?
You've got those intermediate steps, and then the decisions that you make in life are going to be focused around making those goals. And that's how you've got to be deliberate, is you've kind of created this plan of where you want to be in life, where your business or whatever it is, where it needs to be at a certain period in life. And then you have to be extremely deliberate and laser focused on achieving those goals and getting to those specific points.
Yeah.
Now, it's not always going to happen like it did with the real estate. Because of 2008 and everything that happened right there, and a few years after that, I bought my first business, and we weren't able to buy another piece of real estate for about 6 years after that happened. We were lucky we were able to keep afloat. We didn't ever have to sell anything or go into foreclosure or anything like that. But we basically kind of, to a certain extent, had to put some of those goals on hold.
Yeah. And this is, again, I'm going to go back to something I kind of hinted at earlier in the episode, and that is that, yes, this does apply to owning your own trucking company. And we're going to kind of get there, right? Right now, we're just kind of talking about that mindset that you had.
We're talking about the mindset, and we'll transition into trucking in a little bit.
And I just wanted to remind people that, yes, we're putting puzzle pieces together. So be patient with us. So I want to go to your second goal then, and how you got to where you were by the time you were 40. And then we'll talk about how things are going at this point, right? So tell me about the journey in your 30s to get to that second goal of being worth $1 million.
So those 30s, my 30s were really actually pretty productive for me, especially that latter half of my 30s. I was able to purchase another my first business in about my mid 30s, and was able to really kind of focus on it, get it running really well, working really well, making some money. In that meantime, I couldn't buy any other real estate because of the market. And then also when you start a business, you're typically not going to get a loan on a piece of real estate from anybody for at least 2 years after the time that you start. So all those things kind of put that off, and wasn't able to buy my next piece of real estate until I was well into my mid 30s. But everything eventually kind of caught up, because I was still working on that goal of my 40-year goal. I was still working on the 30-year goal, even though the time had passed, but was eventually able to get there. And as you know, over the last 5 or 6 years, the real estate market has recovered really well. It's kind of gone through the roof. I ended up buying my fourth piece of real estate before everything really started kind of taking off, and so it's was kind of bought more at a low instead of at a high, and it's been a super good purchase. And I was able to buy a fifth one within the last couple of years. And, at that point, I've gotten well over the $1 million mark in real estate, and I've gained a lot of equity in the real estate, a lot of success with the business. So there's value there. And that's really kind of what helped me get to that point where I was able to play catch up, and got to the point where I was able to accomplish that 40-year goal of having a net worth over $1 million.
Wow. And it was largely the real estate plus the businesses that you had started.
Yep.
Okay. Whew. All right. So this is a lot. And the reason why I keep wowing at all this is because this is a mindset that I frankly don't have. And so, and again, like you said earlier, we're going to be talking about, it's never too late. And I would also just put out there that you're never the wrong kind of person to do something like this. You don't have to be just like Chris.
Anybody can do it. It's just knowing what you want in life and what's important to you, and setting a goal to achieve that. And then, whether you backwards plan or forwards plan, just creating a well-defined plan with good goals to get you there. We've talked a little bit about goals in the past. Those goals, if you use that SMART acronym, if you remember that right, see if I can remember it off the top of my head.
It's up to you.
So SMART: specific, measurable, achievable,
okay,
realistic, and timely. There we go. SMART.
Nice.
you develop goals that meet that SMART acronym, and you can get there. And it's like eating an elephant. You got to take just one bite at a time. Create those intermediate goals to help you get to and achieve that big ultimate goal. And for me, it was that financial independence. That was my big ultimate goal. I had a time period of when I wanted to be there, and just kind of worked my way towards it.
Yeah. Again, let's come back in a little while to what people like myself, or maybe some of those listening, how they can get into this mindset in their own way. But let me back up a little bit and say, okay, you've already mentioned the financial crash of 2008, and that wreaked havoc on any plans you had for real estate investment, at least, for a few years. And so tell me about any other setbacks that you faced. Like you said, this isn't a clear road, as I know some other branches of the military say the enemy gets a say too.
The enemy does get a say, yeah.
Right. And so, tell me about some other setbacks.
So, some other setbacks. I've had a few businesses that have failed. I've tried to start an insurance business a couple times, never able to get that off the ground. The first business that I ever tried to do, where I was actually going to try to rehab distressed properties, I couldn't get that off the ground. But we had to make sacrifices early on. My wife and I mentioned, not buying that starter home like most people did. We ended up buying that fourplex. And so we're living really in smaller spaces and smaller units than most of our friends. They're living, they're buying nicer houses. And, sometimes jealous probably isn't the right word, but sometimes we'd feel.
You get the little twinge.
The little twinge of inadequacy or jealousy, sure, or something like that. And then, one of the biggest things was just that last piece of real estate that we bought before, like right when the crash happened, was a duplex, and it was, the unit we were living in was 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. At the time we bought it, we had 2 kids. We weren't planning on staying there for too long. Well, fast forward 6 years,
you're still there.
Leave there. By the time we left there, we had 4 kids. Our youngest was about 2 at the time.
Oh.
So 4 kids in a 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom house. And, we had to deal with that for a little while. And it wasn't the funnest thing in the world, but we made it through. We were able to make it happen. And, we had just always made financial sacrifices like that. I think I've talked before that, during a lot of that time period too, I owned the same car. I drove a Honda Civic for 17 years. I drove the same car for a really long time because we were making those kind of, short-term financial sacrifices so we could, invest
achieve
money
a long-term
and get
goal.
Those long-term goals. Deliberate, conscious decisions of, I'm not going to buy a new car every 3 years or even 5 years or something like that. I'm going to put my money towards achieving that goal. Deliberate decisions that help achieve that goal.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is we definitely, the short term is important, but the short term is always in service of the long term, or one might say, Chris, the long haul. Okay.
Look at that pun.
Okay.
Look at you go.
See that A+ transition, people. All right. No, but I want to turn it back to trucking and how this applies. Obviously this is an ownership mindset. This deliberate planning mindset can apply to just about anything, but tell me a little bit about specifically what you're thinking of for somebody starting a trucking company and how all this applies.
Well, whether you're starting a trucking company or you've had a trucking company for a while, you may not have really kind of set up that long-term end state of where you want to be. So the first thing I think anybody that needs to do if they really want to kind of up their game, let's say in trucking, they need to decide what that end state's going to be. So we can use kind of 2 examples. I think we've got 2 kind of segments of our audience here. Some that want to be an owner operator their entire life and feel like they don't want to deal with the headaches of the fleet. They just want to make
good
that
money
for themselves, that independence, more financial freedom. And then you've got the guys that want to grow into a fleet. So that end goal is going to be probably pretty significantly different for those 2 groups. So you take, for example, an owner-operator that you may have the end goal of you want to always have your truck and trailer paid off so that you can maximize your profits, or you may just want to attain a certain income level. So one, you need to figure out what that end state is. For a fleet owner, it might be growing to a certain size or creating a business income level that you want, that you can achieve without having to be in the business 100% of the time. So it's really just boils down to figuring out what that end state's going to be and what that looks like for you. That's step 1.
Okay. All right. And so do you have an example of this? Can we break this down to be a little bit more specific? Because you have worked with a lot of people in the trucking industry over the years. So do you have any examples of people who have exhibited this mindset or lacked it maybe?
I was hoping you'd ask that question. and yeah, I've seen guys that have done that. I've seen some clients go from, a single owner operator to dozens. We even have one client that's got over 100 trucks that, started, it took him about 13 years, but he's over 100 trucks, started as an owner operator, super successful. And we've seen all levels of success kind of in between that. So, what I kind of like to use an example is, let's just talk about a small fleet. Let's say you're want to grow into a small fleet and you want to be able to gain about $10,000 a month of income.
Right. Okay. I as the owner.
You as the owner.
Right.
$10,000 a month in income. So if you think about it, and you kind of use some of the figures that we've seen with Haulin Assets and what kind of income that produce, it's very realistic to see that you should be able to get at least $2,000 a month in net income per truck.
All right, so that's profit after you pay the driver, after you do all the pay the truck and the trailer and all that. So $2,000 a month.
$2,000 a month
per truck.
Per truck. And so if we've got that end goal, that end state of $10,000 a month in net income, we can just kind of start backwards planning from there. Okay, so that means how many trucks do we need? I know math isn't your favorite subject.
Hang on, let me get my abacus. Let me grab my slide rule. 5 trucks. All right, we need 5 trucks.
So then you just start backwards planning. Okay, say I've got 1 truck today. I want to be at 5 trucks. How long is it going to take me to do that? And you can kind of figure out, okay, I want to grow kind of conservatively. I don't want to feel overly stressed. I want to be able to put down all the money I need. I don't want to have to get additional loans other than just maybe the loans on the equipment. I don't want to have to get a loan for the down payment or anything like that. You figure maybe it's going to take me a year between each truck. So then 4 years down the road, I need to be able to purchase truck 4, and then so on 3, 2, all the way down to where you have, you're purchasing your second truck. So for most guys in that kind of situation, at the end of year 2, you're going to be buying truck number 2. At the end of year 3, truck number 3, 4, and so 5 or 6 years down the road is when you've purchased that 5th truck.
Okay.
And so you kind of just make little incremental plans even between there. Like, say you've got your 1 truck today, you're at the end of the first year, you've created this financially sound company, and now you're just going to start saving money for that down payment. And so you kind of look at it, you kind of figure out, okay, how much money am I going to need to be able to buy that second truck? Well, if it's $20,000 to buy the truck and the trailer, then you need to set aside $2,000 a month into a savings account that is kind of your, sacred money for the, buying that second truck. And you just kind of create a very deliberate path to get you from your 1 truck to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on and so forth until you get up to your 5. And then at that point, you kind of look at it, have I achieved that goal, or do I need to make some tweaks to it?
Well, Chris, that all sounds very, very easy. And I'm glad, because everything's easy, right?
A lot of it is. In reality, all joking aside.
Simple. It sounds simple, even if it's not easy. I should make that distinction.
That is a good distinction. A lot of this stuff is really not rocket science. It's just having a good plan, making that plan and executing it. I mean, most of it's not rocket science. It's really not.
So, it's simple, not easy. There are plenty of things that you can't control. We've had the bullets flying analogy. You never know what's going to happen. But if you don't have a plan at all, then you're definitely sunk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're sunk before you even start. So have that plan, and then like you said, focus on the things you control, because plans are going to change. Things are going to come after you that you hadn't planned for. But that's where you focus on the things that you can control. So like with me and the economy in 2008, I couldn't control the economy. I couldn't control who would or wouldn't give me loans. And at that point, loans kind of dried up. And so I just focused on the things that I could control. I focused on how much money I was saving. I focused on the business opportunity and being ready for a business opportunity. Because that's when that's when I came upon the opportunity to buy Motor Carrier HQ. It was Progressive Reporting Agency, Motor Carrier HQ. We bought it as Progressive Reporting Agency in 2010. So still in the middle of the recession, but we got a good price for it. And it was losing money at the time, but we were able to make some tweaks and some changes and able to turn it around pretty quickly. So I was just focusing on growing it, until conditions changed and I was able to, the economy recovered, lending restrictions loosened, and I was able to kind of get back on track with my goal.
And that goal is what it all started with. And that's what we kind of want to keep coming back to, right? Is this idea, you keep calling it backward planning, but Stephen Covey would call it beginning with the end in mind, but know where you want to get so that you can know in what direction to point yourself at the very least, right? But now I want to get back to something that I brought up once or twice now through the episode, and that's the idea that it's never too late to start, or that you're never the wrong person to do this kind of thing. Because like I said, I do not have the same kind of planning, 20-year plan, entrepreneurial mindset that you do. I don't have that. And yet I can kind of recognize little things that I might do to emulate this sort of mindset, even if it's not native to me. Right. But tell me a little bit about, let's back up and just start with the, it's never too late aspect. So, and then come back to the other one.
I can use a pretty good example in my family of it never being too late. Let's talk about my grandpa. So I talked about my farmer grandpa earlier in the podcast. So this is my contractor grandpa, who is a contractor, and he was just a small construction contractor, mostly did like simple remodels and things like that. Well, he never made more than $30,000 a year in his entire life up until he was in his 50s. Then in his mid-50s, he decided to buy his first rental property. He bought a triplex that had a bunch of land on it. And to make a long story short, over the years, he added a unit to the triplex. He ended up building 2 more triplexes. He still never made a ton of money during that whole time, but he lived fairly frugally. And he ended up dying, in his late 70s with a net worth over $2 million. Because he started, even though it was in his mid-50s, but he was deliberate about how he went about doing it. He bought the piece of real estate, added more to his portfolio, got it all paid off as quickly as he could, and he ended up being financially very successful, even though he didn't start until he was in his 50s.
Was this the grandpa whose farm you went and worked on?
No, that was a different grandpa.
Oh, okay. All right.
The contractor grandpa, not the farmer grandpa.
Henceforth shall they be known.
That's how they'll be known.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good example. It's never too late. And I would just want to throw out there as well, if you don't mind me doing this, Chris, that not everybody's goals have to be the same. You kind of touched on this a little bit with the trucking company thing. One guy might just want the independence of being an owner-operator. I just want my truck, just me in the open road, and that's it, right? I don't want to answer to anybody else. I want to have my own company. Somebody else might be thinking, nah, I want that 5-truck fleet. I want that 100-truck fleet. And so those goals are really different. And I would extend that out and just say, your life goals, not just your trucking company, but your life goals might look very different. So for you, it's, you wanted to own $1 million in real estate, be worth $1 million, and then be financially independent. I have this kind of loose goal in mind. I shouldn't say it's loose. I have a goal that I want to be able, by the time I'm, let's see, what am I, 34? Yeah. By the time I'm 40, I want to be able to work remotely anywhere in the world that will let me set up shop. So basically, working online, doing contract work or freelance work, whatever, so that I can go live in Normandy or Costa Rica or whatever, wherever I end up wanting to go. I have that kind of goal in mind. And so I can now see where because I have that goal, I've positioned myself, I've given myself a direction to go in and went for certain types of jobs, gone for certain types of side gigs that would give me the experience that I want, to point me in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you and I have very different life goals, but having the goals is the first step.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's why, for most of us, that's why we work. I mean, most of us don't necessarily work because we love doing it 100% of our time.
Right.
Really what we're trying to engineer here is kind of a lifestyle. That's really why we, for the most part, do all this, is to live a certain lifestyle. And, like for me, I don't necessarily want a super extravagant lifestyle by any means. I want that independence. I want that freedom of not feeling tied down, not feeling like my time's my own and I can do whatever it is that I want. And so that's really what that boils down to. And somebody else's ideal life might be something completely different like yours. You may, living somewhere where you want to, doing what you want to do, that's your lifestyle. And so it's really just kind of creating that plan to get you to where you want to be. And, whether that's in trucking or in something else, it's different for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with those different versions.
Yeah. Very good. So, Chris, any parting thoughts then to tie this all together as far as having an owner mindset, being deliberate, anything else you want to share?
I really truly believe, I mean, it sounds like I'm maybe oversimplifying this a little bit, but being deliberate and having that goal is one of the things that has helped me probably more than just about anything else getting to where I am, and will help me get to be where I want to be, is just having that goal and being deliberate about how you get there, making sure that you're kind of holding yourself accountable to all those little intermittent goals between now and the end goal. And if you don't have a goal, if it's not written down, it's just a dream, and dreams typically don't come true unless you make it happen, and you've got to be deliberate to make sure that happens. You control your own destiny.
I've heard that a lot. If you don't, a goal that isn't written down is just a dream. And so here's what I want. I would love to hear from some people who are listening in. When you have a moment, find us on Facebook, Haulin Assets, or go to Haulin Assets LLC, go to the show notes for this episode. And I would love to hear what people's goals are, whether, life or trucking, but, maybe it's your trucking company. Where do you want it to be? Are you just me in the open road, independent operator kind of guy? Or do you want to get out there, start a fleet? What are your goals, and how long do you want to take to achieve them? And I'd be very interested to hear where people's minds are at.
I would too. That would be awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Hear some stories from people and just sharing those goals. I mean, we can, as a community, support each other and encourage each other. It's never easy to accomplish those goals. I mean, I've kind of oversimplified it in this episode, but I mean, I've gone through a lot of stresses and trials and heartaches and, ups and downs, had wins and losses. And, it's always nice to have, people that you can talk to about that and share your experiences with and hear from other people's experiences. It's a great way to learn and gain experience.
So go share that with us. In fact, something that I haven't done in the past, but I'll do it this time, is I will share a link to the Facebook group on the show notes, or in the show notes. So if you go check out the show notes for this episode, there'll be a link to the HaulinAssetsLLC.com and to the Facebook group. I'd love to hear from people in both of those places.
That would be great.
Cool. All right, Chris. So I will see you next week, I suppose. Do we know what's coming up?
P&L, I believe, is most likely what we're going to be doing next episode.
Time for, is that August report?
August report.
All right. Sounds good. I'll see you next week.
See you then.